Hi again, Mark here from Talkingbass. Today I'm going to try and explain pretty much all you need to know about intervals in less than 15 minutes. I won't be stopping to give any extra information on how to apply them or to memorize them or any of that stuff. Just the raw nuts and bolts, and because it's a video you can just go back over the information and learn it all at your own pace. As per usual, the lesson material is all there over at the website, so just click the link in the info below to grab a download containing all of the information covered. I'll be moving pretty quick, so grab that PDF and follow along and read it back in your own time. Okay, so first things first, there are 3 things that you need to know that should get rid of some of the misconceptions. Number 1. Intervals are measurements of musical distance, just like tones and semitones or whole steps and half steps. It's just that they're a little more descriptive and can be used to label much greater distances than those smaller steps. Number 2, the names of intervals are by and large unrelated to scales. They are building blocks in their own right. The basic set that we'll look at first are roughly named according to the major scale, but beyond that, ignore any relationship to scales. For example, a minor second is nothing to do with a minor scale. A minor second can be found within many scales, including the major scale, but the name is completely unrelated. Number 3, intervals are basically the alphabet of music. They are the letters of the language. Musical phrases, scales, chords, arpeggios, and everything else can be described and built from intervals. They are the smallest building blocks that we use, and so when you learn intervals, you're laying a foundation for your musical study. Learn them first by name, by letter, by pattern, and most importantly, by their sound, and everything else in both theory and practice will be much, much easier. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, I'm assuming a basic knowledge of a major scale. This is the only scale that we need to get started. So let's take a C major scale as the example. So there we have the note names C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Now we number those notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5, A is 6, and B is 7. Then we arrive back at C, which is 1. Now, those numbers are scale degrees, not intervals. Scale degrees apply whatever the register and placement. So if we're using a C major scale, D is the second, no matter where we put it. So, wherever we play that, it's the second. G is always going to be the 5th relative to that C major. Intervals are different. They are measurements unrelated to the key or scale in effect, which I'll come back to in a second. So we have a set of scale degrees for the major scale. So now we need to add a quality to label the intervals. So to do this, all you have to remember is that for our basic set of intervals that we derive from a major scale, the 1st, the 4th, and 5th are all perfect and the rest are major. So we have a perfect 1st, or unison, the major 2nd, the major 3rd, the perfect 4th, the perfect 5th, the major 6th, and the major 7th. So remember what I said, we're looking at measurements. So with intervals, we measure from a note to another note. So C to D is a major 2nd, C to E is a major 3rd, C to G is a perfect 5th. Look at the fretboard patterns there. The major 2nd is that single whole step pattern, okay? The major 3rd is that pattern up a string and down a fret. Get used to the patterns to begin with, but there's more to it as you'll see later. But it's a start, so practice playing those patterns all over the fretboard. Learn their appearance and also, most importantly, how they sound. Learning to identify and sing intervals is the basis of ear training. Remember, these are the building blocks of music. So I could take a perfect 5th interval, like this C to G, that little fretboard pattern there, up 2 frets and across a string, and then just play it all over the neck. Wherever I play that pattern, that's a perfect 5th. Okay, so that's the basic set of intervals. Now remember what I said earlier, these are measurements unrelated to a scale or key. A good way of seeing this is by looking at other intervals within a major scale. So in C major, we have the basic set of intervals from C, but I could also measure other intervals in there from each note. So F to G is a major 2nd, D to A is a perfect 5th, G to C is a perfect 4th. The scale degrees are irrelevant. We're simply measuring distances from one note to another. If we take something out of the key, E flat to B flat, that's still a perfect 5th. Just because we're in the key of C major doesn't change that. Those notes You know, they're not in C major. And this is where people get confused. They see scale degrees and intervals as one and the same thing, and they're not. Okay, so once you've learned the basic perfect and major intervals, we can add minor intervals into the mix. Now, to create a minor interval, we take a major interval and we take that top note and drop it down a half step. So remember what I said earlier, it's nothing to do with a minor scale. Just take the top note of a major interval down a half step. So C to E is a major third. Drop that E down to E flat, that's down a half step, and that's a minor third. So C to E flat is a minor third, and that's it. So C to D is a major second, C to D flat is a minor second, C to A is a major sixth, C to A flat is a minor sixth, C to B is a major seventh, C to B flat is a minor seventh. Once you can see the intervals from C, move them to other notes. So G to B is a major third, G to B flat is a minor third, A to F sharp is a major sixth, A to F is a minor sixth, B flat to C is a major second, B flat to C flat is a minor second. Now, B flat to C flat brings up an enharmonic point. This naming and recognition of the note names is really, really important. It works alphabetically. B flat to C flat is a minor second. It's not B flat to B natural, as you might be tempted to write because, you don't like the thought of a C flat. But just think alphabetically. B to C is a type of second, regardless of the flats or sharps. So B flat to C, B to C sharp, B flat to C sharp, B flat to C flat. Any kind of B to any kind of C is a second of some kind. And this is because C is the next note along from B in the alphabet. B flat to B natural would be a kind of first. Now, this might seem a little odd to begin with because you might not be used to all of this enharmonic stuff, but just think of the order of notes in the alphabet regardless of the sharps, naturals, and flats. So if you're on C, C to D is a type of second. C to E, it's always going to be a type of third, regardless of the naturals and flats in there. You just work along through the alphabet. C to C, a first. C to D, a second. C to E, a type of third. So that's major, minor, and perfect intervals. Next, we need to look at augmented and diminished intervals. So for our most basic augmented and diminished intervals, we derive them from altering the perfect intervals. So take a perfect interval, let's say the perfect fifth, for example. To create an augmented interval, an augmented fifth, we raise the top note by a half step. And then for a diminished interval, so for a diminished fifth in this example, we drop the top note by a half step. So think augment to increase in size, diminish to reduce in size. So again, take a perfect interval, raise the top note by a half step for augmented, and then drop the top note by a half step for a diminished interval. So using that principle, C to G is a perfect fifth. C to G sharp is an augmented fifth. C to G flat is a diminished fifth. C to F is a perfect fourth. C to F sharp is an augmented fourth. C to F flat is a diminished fourth. And remember, this is all based on letter name, so C to G sharp by pattern is the same as A flat. G sharp and A flat are the same pitch, but based on context, C to G sharp is an augmented fifth, C to A flat is a minor sixth. Same pitches, but different intervals depending on the context, and that context might be to do with the key or the chord in effect, whatever. But just remember, C to that note there, so I've got the third fret of the A string to the sixth fret of the D string. C to G sharp or A flat. If it's a G sharp, that's going to be an augmented fifth. If we're seeing it as an A flat, then it's a minor sixth. Okay, we're almost there. That's the most common set of intervals, but it's important to know that we can also have augmented or diminished seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. They're much less common, but still an important part of music theory. So the augmented and diminished intervals lie above the major and below the minor. So let's take a major third of C to E. If we raise the top note a half step, we get an augmented third. So C to E sharp is an augmented third. Then if we take a minor third of C to E flat, drop that top note down a half step, so we get C to E double flat, and that's a diminished third. And yes, it can seem a little odd with all the enharmonic issues in there, but they do occur in music. So when we're looking at an augmented third, we're looking at E sharp. Yes, it looks like an F, But in this case, when it's an augmented third, that's an E sharp. And yes, an E double flat is the same pitch as a D natural, but when we're seeing it as a type of E, then that's going to be a diminished third. So just think, you've got the major and the minor. Above the major, we've got the augmented, and below the minor, we've got the diminished. So, as some examples, A to F sharp is a major sixth. A to F double sharp is an augmented sixth. A to F is a minor sixth, and A to F flat is a diminished sixth. Then from D up to C sharp is a major seventh. D to C double sharp is an augmented seventh. D to C is a minor seventh, and D to C flat is a diminished seventh. Now the diminished seventh interval is a very common interval that you'll find in a diminished 7 chord, which is made up of a root note, a minor third, a diminished fifth, and a diminished seventh interval. So from C, you'd have the root note there, C, then E flat, then G flat, and then B double flat, which people will often call an A. But in fact, when you look at it theoretically, it is actually a diminished seventh. Okay, so that's a B double flat. Now, so far, I've only looked at intervals within an octave, but we can also move to infinity and beyond by looking at compound intervals. And these are intervals beyond the octave, and are easy to understand because they're exactly the same as the intervals that we've already looked at, but they just have a higher number. So if we take a basic set of natural intervals within the major scale, starting on C there, we've got C to D, major second, C to E, major third, C to F, perfect fourth. When we reach the octave, the eighth, which is the perfect eighth, we can continue going. So C up to this D, above the octave, that's a major ninth. C up to this E is a major 10th. Then C up to this F, that's a perfect 11th. C up to the G, perfect 12th. C up to the A there, major 13th, and then C up to this B would be a major 14th. So 9th is the same as second, 10th is the same as the third, and so on. You can also label these by just placing compound as a prefix in the label. So a major 9th can be labelled as a compound major second. Perfect 11th is a compound perfect 4th, etc. This is why I'm quick to differentiate between scale degrees and intervals. With scale degrees, once we pass the octave, it's all just repeated. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But intervals are measurements of distance, not tonal placement. So a major ninth is an interval, not a scale degree. Also, remember that we can apply all of the interval principles that we've looked at so far to those compound intervals. So we can have a minor 10th, an augmented 11th, and so on. So that's it for the labelling of intervals. Lastly, we need to look at interval inversion. When we invert intervals, we basically measure them in a downward direction. So think of C to B, okay? So ascending, C to B, is a major seventh. But what if we're measuring down from C to that B? Well, that's not a major seventh interval. It's only a half step down. It's a minor second, but descending. And this is interval inversion. So the rules for this are simple. To work out the inversion of an interval, we take the ascending version and apply the following rules. For the numbers, second becomes seventh, third becomes sixth, fourth becomes fifth, and vice versa. So seventh becomes second, sixth becomes third, and fifth becomes fourth. For the qualities, it's even easier. Perfects stay the same, major becomes minor, augmented becomes diminished. So we're basically creating a mirror image of the interval. So in practice, C to G, ascending, is a perfect fifth, but C down to G is a perfect fourth. So it stays perfect, but we just change fifth to fourth. D up to F is a minor third. D down to F is a major sixth. So the minor becomes a major and the third becomes a sixth. As an example of the augmented and diminished intervals, A up to D sharp is an augmented fourth, but A down to D sharp, that's a diminished fifth. So augmented fourth, it becomes diminished fifth. Augmented becomes diminished, fourth becomes fifth. So that's pretty much all you need to know about intervals. Like I said, there's a fair bit of information there, but if you work through the principles in a progressive, step-by-step manner in the order that I've presented, it shouldn't be too hard. Once you understand those basic set of principles and you can recognize intervals by letter, pattern, and sound, every other area of music will start to make more and more sense, especially music theory. If you've jumped the gun, and moved on to double harmonic scales, diminished harmony, and serial composition without mastering the basic alphabet of music in the shape of intervals, then things are going to start to get confusing very, very quickly. So this is your musical foundation. Okay, so like this vid if it's helped, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Also grab that lesson material download over at Talkingbass by clicking in the link below or in the card, and I'll see you next week.